Let's review Pesachim Daf Vav. The Gemara starts off with a machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yossi Haglili whether or not you're allowed to make matzah out of Meiser Sheni. Rabbi Yossi Haglili doesn't allow it because it's called lechem oini, and by Meiser Sheni it says lo yachalti ba'oini mimenu. You're not allowed to eat Meiser Sheni when you're an oinen. However, Rabbi Kiva says that's not what we learn from lechem oini. Rather, we learn it's lechem she'oinin alav dvarim harbe. There's a lot of speeches by the mitzvah of achilas matzah. We say the whole Haggadah, and it also means lechem oini, that you're not allowed to use matzah shira. It has to be lechem oini. The Gemara does say that only for the first night of Pesach, when you're being mekayim the mitzvah of matzah, then you're not allowed to have matzah shira. But Rabbi Kiva would for sure hold that the rest of Yom Tov you're allowed to eat matzah shira. The Gemara discusses whether or not you're allowed to make matzah milchiks. So the Gemara says you're allowed to make bread milchiks with a condition that it's made differently. So the Gemara says it has to be ke'ein tura, and there's one pshat that means it has to be very small quantities. So it'll be eaten up in one serving, and it won't be left around, and then it could be mistakenly eaten with fleishiks. Or ke'ein tura might mean that you have to make it into a unique shape that would make it clear to everybody that this isn't power of a bread. Then the Gemara discusses if you're allowed to knead the dough of matzah with warm water. And the Gemara says you're not allowed to because the warm water will make it become chametz quickly. So the Gemara asks, why is it by the mincha in the Beis HaMikdash they were allowed to knead it with warm water? So the Gemara says because in the Beis HaMikdash there's reason around. The Kohanim, everything is done quickly and fast. There, you're allowed to use warm water because we're not concerned that it will become chametz. But in your personal home, we're concerned that it will become chametz. And the Gemara says there's one exception, that is the carbon omer, which was prepared not in the Beis HaMikdash. Since it's a carbon tzibur, again, it's under the auspices of Bezdin, it's being watched by the Meshkiach. There we would allow you to knead with warm water, even though it's not in the Beis HaMikdash. Then the Gemara discusses bikurim. Are you allowed to use bikurim to make matzah? And both Rabbi Yossi Haglili and Rabbi Kiva agree that you cannot use bikurim for matzah, and the reason why you're not allowed to is because it says in the pasuk, "B'chol moish v'yseichem toichlu matzos." Matzahs have to be able to be eaten anywhere, and bikurim may only be eaten in Yerushalayim. So therefore, bikurim are disqualified from being able to make matzah with them. The Gemara asked, according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, why can't we use lechem oini to exclude bikurim? Because bikurim also has to be eaten besimcha. On that, the Gemara says there's a machlokes whether or not bikurim has to be eaten besimcha, and Rabbi Shimon holds it does not. The Gemara says it does say v'samachta b'chol hatoiv in reference to bikurim. So the Gemara says according to Rabbi Shimon that bikurim does not have to eat in besimcha. All it means is that you have to bring it at a time of simcha, which means the time of the harvest. And the Gemara says that bikurim are brought primarily between Shavuos and Sukkos, and during that period, if it's brought, you can say the whole pasha of bikurim of Arami Ayravi, where you're gushing your simcha and your akar shatoiv to the Rebbeinu Shalom for the great fortune in your harvest. But from Sukkos to Chanukah, you're allowed to bring bikurim because there's still some fruits around in the field, but you're not allowed to say the parsha. And after Chanukah, you don't bring bikurim at all. Then the Gemara discusses a different type of lechem of matzah shira, and that is matzah that was either boiled or matzah in great quantities. The Gemara says that's not allowed because that is also a choshev type of matzah which would not be considered lechem oini.